what I'd like to do tonight is go through the entire state of the neighborhood, which is big. There's a lot in that. And so let me start first with who are we, right? ECNA, East Colfax Neighborhood Association. We have quite a few new faces tonight, which is amazing. We are a registered neighborhood organization comprised wholly of volunteers. We are committed to preventing displacement, increasing safety, and bringing resources to our underserved, overburdened neighborhood. When we talk about East Colfax and the East Colfax neighborhood, we are specifically talking about these boundaries. This is the formal neighborhood of East Colfax. The East Colfax corridor is often referred to. The entire half of East Colfax that's not West Colfax is often referred to as East Colfax. So what we're talking about tonight is very specifically this space. Our population is about 11,000 residents. We have 24% of our families are in poverty. 34% of our residents speak a language other than English at home. And I've listed some of the languages here: Amharic, Tigrinya, Rohingya, Karen, Burmese, Arabic, French, Spanish. So we do not just have one or two languages. We have a massive refugee population in this neighborhood that we work to support. And 60% of our residents are housing cost burdened. So just to give you an idea of kind of who we're talking about when we talk about the East Colfax neighborhood. We are a NEST neighborhood. So NEST is a designation that's given to neighborhoods at risk of destabilization, especially due to gentrification and climate concerns. East Colfax is not only the 5th most populated of those neighborhoods, but we're the 3rd most dense. So we have a very large population of the residents that fall under NEST designation. So why are we here today? I'm the president of ECNA at the moment. I'm term limited. This will be the last update that I will be providing. So it's very important to me that I give an update of everything that's going on in the state of East Colfax, department by department with the city. I think one of our former residents said it best when she was presenting at the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting, when she said, our neighborhood and our neighbors face many challenges in East Colfax. It is easy to feel neglected by city departments and to feel like deep and persistent equity challenges remain. Issues like we'll show you today that drag on for years, despite consistent community involvement and advocacy, feel like a continued lack of equity. So it's a lot of what we're going to be talking about throughout the next 45-ish minutes. So here's our agenda for today. What we're going to be going through is department by department, sharing our observations, what we've seen in the neighborhood, the issue why those observations are a problem, and then recommendations. So we feel in East Colfax, it's very important for us to also give our recommendations to the city of what we need to see. And a lot of this is going to be what we've already asked for time and time again. And you'll also see quite a bit of what we've already been promised and have not received yet. That being said, I also want to note, we get it. We know there's high turnover in the city with employees. We know that there's a lot going on. We know that most city employees are here to give it all they've got, right? They started in their careers to do good for the community. The important thing to note with what I'm presenting tonight is that our neighborhood is, again, overburdened and underserved. So it's not that we just have one or two problems that aren't being addressed. It's that we have so many problems that are time and time again not being addressed. We can't do much more, right? Where we feel our hands are tied. To me, it's worse to be asked and have nothing done than it is to not be asked at all. So I'd like you to kind of think through that as we go through this. All right, so department by department. I won't read every single thing out, but we are going to go through these slides because I think it's really important to understand what these issues are. If anyone here has issues that they'd like to add to this list, which will get sent out to many of these or all of these departments after this meeting, please let me know. I'm happy to include anything else that we need. So let's talk about 311, because it came up in the DPD discussion. I think it's a really important conversation. So 311 cases are required to be logged so that the city knows that there's an issue, right? But underserved communities are less likely to submit 311 cases, which results in fewer resources to the neighborhoods that need it the most. What are some reasons that 311 cases are not submitted? Technology challenges, the feeling of tattling, time, and just focused on trying to live your life, right? And get through the day. We don't have a lot of residents that have excess time to be submitting 311 cases. What we'd like to see is that RNOs and other nonprofits are allowed to submit 311 type cases on behalf of the community, and they get counted as if a large sum of people were submitting them. So for example, if I submitted as ECNA an RNO, a 311 case for the corner that was presented tonight, I want that to log 50 311 cases, because I'm submitting it on behalf of the entire neighborhood, saying this whole block knows this is going on. They just don't have the capability to submit every single case every single time they see it, right?
Yes.
Thanks.
Let's do that.
What I'd also like to see is if DPD is called because of like a noise violation, right? A resident must separately log a 311 case for a decibel follow-up, right? So the DPD can address it in the moment, hey, too loud. But you have to call 311, submit a case to the point that they send someone out to come out and actually check the decibels for a citation to happen in the long run. Most of the time, I think there's probably multiple tickets they can get. So residents shouldn't have to have prior knowledge to navigate the city system. You shouldn't have to know to submit 2 separate cases every single time there's an overlapping case. It's a major burden on the citizens. So what I'd like to see is the DPD CDHS child welfare process to be mimicked for multiple departments. So for example, if DPD goes out to a case, and this is not just DPD, there's many multi-department situations that this should happen with. But if DPD goes out to a situation and child welfare is needed, a case is automatically logged directly to child welfare as well. This is my understanding per conversation with Commander Bancroft. But that could be put in place across many multi-department cases, right? So we're not having the burden of logging all the cases to all the people all the time. So let's move on to CASR. So the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability and Resiliency. We've spent significant time bringing people together and managing the funds for the rapid assessments. This happened mostly last fall. But the final report didn't reflect the workshop feedback, and nothing has come out of the rapid assessments. What we'd like to see is that the final report is reevaluated, and that CASR works with us to identify and actually implement some solutions. One of their main targets is environmental justice. Environmental justice should be focused on nest neighborhoods like East Colfax, and that hasn't happened yet, right? Like they've been fully funded for over a year. We'd like to start seeing some of this come to fruition. Additionally, we have met separately with 6 different CASR reps, and nothing's yet materialized. We do not have the capacity, and I would suspect that no neighborhood has the capacity to hold all the meetings with no tangible outcomes. So what I'd like to see is have one contact that can reach out to us regularly and help bring some projects to actual fruition and completion. Dottie, one of our favorites. This will be a multi-slide, so just be ready. All right, so we don't have walk signals at a few of our stoplights, especially on Syracuse. So 13th, 14th, I don't think 17th has a walk signal either, right? Now this is a safety issue. It can't be resolved because these stoplights are too old. They're span wire stoplights. And so pedestrian crossing cannot be added to those stoplights. Now, what I maybe didn't mention in the beginning, and I should have, is why do I know all of this? Because we've asked before, because all of these have been brought up time and time again, right? This is not just a first time conversation. So because these are old span wire stoplights, because our stoplights have not been upgraded, we can't have safe pedestrian crossing. What we would like to see is that the stoplights are replaced so that they are aligned with the current standards. All right, missing one-way signs at many of our alleyways. So our two one-way streets are 13th and 14th. We have drivers drive the wrong way down both of those streets very frequently. We brought this up time and time again. We are missing, I went and counted today, I believe we are missing 18 one-way alley stop signs in their signs in this neighborhood. And we also have no wrong way notifications saying, hey, you're going the wrong way, right? So you can go really long ways. We've seen police cars, ambulances, fire trucks all drive the wrong way down the one-ways, right? It's obviously not obvious. We brought this up to Dottie on April 5th of 2023. On August 15th, so many months later, I received feedback that 13th Avenue has identified one-way signs that are missing from alleys. They are working to put a work order together to have the traffic ops team install. Please be patient because right now the team is working on street paving. So because of street paving, and now we're months after that, and we're still missing at least 18 signs, again, from my count, we'd like to see one-way signs installed and also wrong-way signs. All right. I've heard from District 8 that maybe it's in the budget now. So in the fake budget, it's not in the budget, there's a micro budget. Because it's so minuscule that it just should happen anyway. So it doesn't even make it into the budget. Okay, yeah. So we're really excited to hopefully see those come through, but want to make note, we definitely need them.
Yes, you do.
So then let's talk about 13th and 14th as a whole. So the roads are completely straight one ways, right? Very, very straight. You have visibility for a long time. You have no stoplights for a long time. In parts of both 13th and 14th, each lane is 18 foot wide. That means that each lane is 6 foot wider than what a freeway lane is. We see people drive 70 miles an hour on 13th and on 14th, and that data has been collected and nothing has been done about it. You wanna know why people are driving 70 miles an hour? Because they can, and they feel like they should. So feedback that we've gotten is that, well, the reason that those lanes are so wide is because you should have cars parked all the way along 13th and 14th. As you leave tonight, please go out on 14th, look both directions and see how many cars you see parked on either side of the street. And I did not plan that. I did not, make sure no one parked there. It's just not something that's gonna happen, right? So even if you park cars on both sides of the street where you have 18 foot wide, you still have 12 foot wide lanes. And our lanes are supposed to be between 10 and 12 foot wide. There's no need to have a 12 foot wide lane. On top of that, the reason these are 10 and 12 foot wide lanes is because both streets are deemed arterial streets. Why are these deemed arterial streets? They were mislabeled intentionally to get more funding, more federal funding years ago. The federal funding has since changed. We no longer get federal funding in that same way, but these streets are still designated arterial streets, which prevents them from being changed in the way that this neighborhood needs them to change for the safety of our neighborhood. We've had 2 fatalities, one at 13th in Syracuse and one at 14th in Syracuse within 6 months of each other last year. No significant changes were made because at that time, minor changes were made, to be clear, but no design changes were made because both of the fatalities were hit and runs. Therefore, there could be no determination that the design of the roads were the problem that led to the crashes. What would we like to see? We'd like to see the arterial streets relabeled, 13th and 14th relabeled, so that they're no longer arterial streets, so that they can be changed in the way that they need to be changed to keep our neighbors safe. We don't want to wait for the BRT project, which is the feedback we've gotten so far. We can't wait, right?
Please.
Here's an example of a really nice looking street that would serve our community so well. That is also 36 feet wide, right? Within 36 feet of space, you can have 2 6-foot sidewalks, a 4-foot bike lane, and still have 2 10-foot wide lanes. Doesn't that look nice?
Beautiful.
Protection, that bike lane off.
Yeah, exactly. It was a lot of effort to add little posts along the whole thing, so just assume there's a barrier there. And to that point, I chose even numbers. You could certainly have a wider bike lane as well, right? And a skinnier, and that's without cutting into any of the lawns, which have the 10-foot easement for sidewalks. Right, that's without accessing the easement, what we have space for. We'll move on from 13th and 14th, but we're sticking with Dottie for a minute. Most of our neighborhood does not have sidewalks. This is unsafe for pedestrians in a public transit reliant neighborhood. So to get to public transit, people have to walk or bike or any of the other things that are also not safe to do in our neighborhood. What would we like to see? We'd like to see the sidewalks installed that were promised and funded and budgeted in the Denver Rise bonds from 2019. We don't really care that there's new sidewalk things going on. These were funded 5 years ago, 4 years ago. We'd really like to see that money spent. And based off of our communication with DPR, which you guys will see in a little bit, my guess is they're gonna say, well, we no longer have enough money because of inflation. Right? We'd like to see this moved on as soon as possible. We're told we have to wait.
A proper tax.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So 17th has no streetlights between Syracuse and Yosemite. It has poor visibility. That intersection has poor visibility when traveling west, crossing Syracuse. The issue is there's extremely high speeds on 17th, frequent crashes at the 17th and Syracuse intersection. What can be done for this? Speed enforcement, traffic calming, especially to the east of Syracuse on 17th. That is a very large space. I want to say half mile, 3/4 mile between those two streetlights. And there is nothing slowing people down.
No regard to their own lives.
So people,
Pictures of accidents today. It's out
Yeah.
there. I was like, go back to the TV.
No, 1 block south.
the question here in person is at Ashley Elementary. It's the south side of Ashley Elementary, 1 block south of Ashley. It's the south of McNichols, the south edge of McNichols.
Thanks.
So if you're traveling from Aurora,
Okay.
yeah, if you're traveling from Aurora
But still, the school.
through Denver.
Yeah, and there is a light by Ashley that people flow all the time.
Right, that's, so I'm driving, I go through that one and then we're talking the.
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, the one before it's an alley light, right? Or it's a crosswalk only light, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it flashed
Yeah.
a little bit. Yes.
So to the point of people blow that red light all the time. Okay, people go through red lights in Denver all the time in general, but why does it result in so many crashes at that intersection? Because the 2 red lights, the 2 directions are only both red for 1.9 seconds. The standard, what they are supposed to be from the research that I have done, is it should be 2.5 seconds. So it's a 0.6 second deficit. So if you run a red, you are very likely to hit someone who already has a green. I also went through today, and I didn't add it here, but just to see what other lights in our neighborhood are at. And all of them on 13th and 14th, so Syracuse and Oneida, are all right at that 2.0 second mark. So less than 2.5. All right, we'll move on to Nest for a little bit. So Nest neighborhoods. all of the Nest neighborhoods have many of the same problems as we do, and we have no way to learn from each other, right? Look at Westwood, super similar neighborhood to us in the size, the population density. They also have other languages, not nearly as many as we have, but they do have multiple dominant languages in their neighborhood. And the result of us not being able to communicate with each other is overburdened communities wasting time figuring out and navigating city processes when another overburdened community has already figured out how to navigate it, right? We'd like Nest to facilitate a space for all of the Nest neighborhoods to discuss best practices and to really own that. Instead of just only having contact information, I'd really like the organization to say, let's talk about what other neighborhoods are doing, and let's get everyone together and see how we can bring information from a Westwood into an East Colfax, and what does that look like? Additionally, some of you know ECNA had to give up an activation grant this year because we could not complete the tasks. As a volunteer-only board, we could not tackle what we needed to tackle for a grant. And frankly, they made that grant fairly easy. But they're still too difficult. If they want volunteer-run nonprofit organizations to be able to take on these grants, it needs to be significantly easier than it is already. So what I'd like to see is Nest mentor first-time grant applicants and really to encourage them to set aside money to pay for the management of the grant. So as volunteer-run organization, we did not think for 1 second to add in money to pay for someone to manage the grant. What we found out is that's what every nonprofit does. Right? It wasn't something that we thought through. So additional recommendation for them. Clerk and Recorder, let's talk about why we don't have a voting box in this neighborhood. Why do we not have a voting box? We don't have a voting box because we don't have a library. Yep. We don't have a voting box because we don't have a rec center. Yep. We don't have a voting box because we don't have a single public space in this neighborhood. So we can't have a voting box. Additionally, we've tried to get private locations to meet the specifications. Tim has been very generous offering up Counterpath. We'd love to see one here. So my understanding is Counterpath, for example, it's because we don't have sidewalks in this neighborhood. We don't have ADA accessible sidewalks to get to this location. As far as we've been told, that is why we can't have this this location, right? We'd love to see that change. We'd love to see a little bit of leniency with the city so that we can have a voting box in our neighborhood. Now, we've been asking for this since 2018. We heard nothing until we reached back out to the clerk and recorder about redistricting in 2021. We started establishing relationships. Where are we today? We have held a red box event. So one day in November, we get a box brought to us in our neighborhood, and people can vote within their neighborhood. One day. We did that one day last year. We did that one day this year. Additionally, Denver box was put in at the MLK Library in Aurora. So we can now go to Aurora to drop off our ballots. It's about the same distance as the Montclair Rec Center to the south. I forget where we are on the north, but we have one about equidistant up there as well. Hiawatha could be, yeah, thanks. So EC3 also stepped in, the East Colfax Community Collective, and they've really taken a lot of conversations with the clerk and recorder, which has been phenomenal. So we're continuing to work with them, but we couldn't get it for this election. And last year, that was our big goal, right? We really want to have it for this election because it's a small election. Let's test it out. Let's get it set. Let's get it moving. And we couldn't make it happen. So we're kind of starting from the beginning again, as far as I know. All right, DPD. So we have talked about a lot of things with DPD tonight already. And one thing that I wanted to point out, I had mentioned before, there's been significant turnover. I specifically mentioned the commander position, and that's because Commander Bancroft used to come to all of our meetings. So we have kind of a special relationship with her. I know that that's not a normal thing. I know we can't expect that of every commander in DPD by any means. But because we had that extra relationship and attention, we were able to get all of the data instantly, kind of whenever we really needed it. And that's obviously a fabrication. If there was an ongoing investigation, we weren't getting any information, right? Things like that. But we could know, for example, when Ma was shot, we could get information about that, right? We could know what was going on because we lost someone who was so important to our community. And we don't have that connection. So we appreciate both of you being here tonight. We've had a lot of community engagement conversations lately. I'm really glad that Technician Coda has also started sharing all of the details of the data itself. I think that that's really valuable, and I think it leads to valuable conversations like we had tonight. So I'm appreciative of the direction that we're moving with this. We also used to have Officer Murray, who is supposed to be dedicated toward traffic concerns in our neighborhood. We haven't seen him in a very long time. And we also used to have Matt Roberts show up, who is our, he's not a resource officer. He's a victim advocate. Thank you. He's our victim advocate for our neighborhood. And ECNA was really involved in his hiring process and making sure that we had a victim assistant in the grant process as well to be able to hire that position. So we'd really like to see that change as well. I think it's really important to have our community really know who those people are. Air One photos were taken back in 2022 that explicitly showed that East Colfax, especially the south half, is underlit from a streetlight perspective. That was supposed to be acted on, again, back in the fall 2022. It was presented at the September safety meeting. We followed up in October, we followed up in November, and we followed up in December. And then frankly, it fell off of our radar. And so I'm bringing it back because we still do not have light in this neighborhood, which is leading to increasingly dangerous situations. I think especially when we see the drug use and the prostitution becoming so much more blatant over the last 3 months, which it has. We know it's always been there. It's so blatant now. I think having completely dark streets is a big part of that, especially on the south half. So what would we like to see? We'd like to see that Air One photography that's already being taken, that has already been taken, actually be used to make the changes that we were promised many months ago. We've already talked about the prostitution and drug use. So my main note with that is we need serious attention to the matter, right? It's getting so much worse so quickly. It's coming so far into our neighborhoods. We all chose to live near Colfax, right? I get that. But it's really infiltrating in a way that we haven't seen it do before. And we need that addressed before it gets much, much worse.
Yes.
BRT, Chi-Chi's favorite topic.
Oh, the BRT. Here we go.
So when we had BRT attend one of our meetings, we were told that the improvements off of Colfax, so 13th, 14th, 17th, where a lot of the traffic when BRT comes in. Let me take a quick step back. BRT stands for Bus Rapid Transit. So as many of you may know, there is a big bus lane that's going to go down the center of Colfax, kind of along the whole Colfax corridor. And it's going to take lanes from Colfax, which will push more traffic onto 13th, 14th, and 17th, which we've spent a long time tonight talking about how dangerous those are in our neighborhood already and how we have major issues.
Flush more traffic into the neighborhood.
They are, without making any of the changes that we've addressed. So BRT and Dottie are not having a comprehensive conversation to make sure that what the changes that are needed on Dottie's behalf are, sorry, that got weird. What we'd like to see is that the changes that Dottie needs to do are done before BRT starts. Because I think the point we're getting to right now is we're just going to have a bunch more people and a bunch more traffic pushed, and all of our problems are going to be exacerbated rather than fixed.
Amen.
So we'd really like to have a discussion that we'd be happy to be involved in with BRT and Dottie. Also, most of the neighborhood, as we mentioned, doesn't have sidewalks. And with the BRT, when the BRT is being installed, it's going to shut down access to businesses via Colfax. Now, this is an issue related to the Dottie conversation about sidewalks, but if you cut off access to the businesses from Colfax, and then you have people park on all of our side streets and then walk to Colfax, but then they're walking on a bunch of streets that have no sidewalks. How many people are you putting in danger by doing that entire process? And part of what the Denver Rise Bond funded was sidewalks specifically in the high traffic corridors to businesses and to bus stops. And so we'd still like to see those installed. All right, DPR, I don't expect you to be able to read any of this, but DPR is Denver Parks and Recreation. This whole conversation is the saga of Verbena Park. There are a few portions of this that I am going to dive deep into because of how absurd they are and how frustrating they are. I'm going to have to try to read this, so I'm going to kind of lean into the computer to make sure I get all my quotes correct here. I spent a long time going through emails over the last few days. Back in February of 2019, this was when one of our residents had reached out with playground concerns. She was told at that time from the councilwoman we had that it would be a part that had been confirmed by DPR that the capital improvement project budget would include Verbena Park. That was in 2019. We were promised it would be included in July of 2019 as one of the improvement projects. The reason stated by DPR in 2019 was that the Verbena Park structure was the oldest in the district. 2019, we were the oldest in the district. Get to July 2019, Verbena was not included in the budget. November of that year, after a lot of pressing pushback, argument about not being included in the budget, DPR somehow found money and said, sure, we will include you in the budget. And we were supposed to have the design budget in 2020, and the playground was supposed to be built in 2021. Construction was budgeted for 2021. In May of 2021, a community meeting was held with DPR where DPR suggested, I don't know if anyone was on that meeting, they suggested that our park in our neighborhood, in the corner of our neighborhood that has a significant number of refugee families, look like a ski chalet. Excellent idea. My response at that time was, have you ever visited our neighborhood? And the answer was no. It was a very serious and very resounding no. That the people designing our parks had never ventured 20 minutes to this side of town to see who's using this space and how are they using it before they make suggestions and decisions. In June of 2021, our neighborhood, because we have so much money on this side of town, we were asked to fund our own park and put in $25,000 to $85,000. Now, this was for the really absurd requests we had, which included benches, picnic tables, a basketball court, a barbecue pit, and just that a futsal court goal were included on the basketball court. Absurdity. We did, and really thanks to Street Frat and an anonymous donor, we did raise $25,000. And that's why we have a futsal court out there today. So I recommend you drive by and take a look. It's a really cool thing, and it's going to serve the community really well. But I very much want to make it known that our neighborhood of East Colfax paid in $25,000 for our own park. That was the oldest in the district. They paid them, but then so we did all this, got the money. In 2022, though, there were budget issues. And so all of this was pushed to the spring of 2023. During this time, our slide in that park had caution tape around it, looked like a crime scene. It was boarded up, stayed that way for, I think it was about 5 months. There was peeling paint. It looked really terrible. So in January of 2023, again, our resident who had presented 4 years prior at the advisory board meeting for Parks and Rec, she presented again. She showed pictures of how bad the park looked throughout all of this, and made another plea. In spring of 2023, we were told it was going to be completed that year. And then in June of this year, I was sent an email that said they just found out that the playground equipment had a lead time of 35 weeks. So playground equipment wasn't ordered soon enough. And so we now have a 35-week wait time until we can get our playground. So where are we at today? A significant portion of the city funding that went into this park went into the drainage. We didn't have acceptable drainage in this park, so that's where all our fund money got to go, where a lot of other parks are getting really amazing parks. There's one in Northeast Park Hill I'd recommend everyone check out. That is beautiful. It's absolutely stunning.
It costs $100,000, right?
Yeah, a lot.
Not you,
But-
non-community. I don't know.
Yes, non-community funded. And our money went to drainage, fixing the drainage. So we did get the basketball court, which is great, but we were promised that the entire basketball court was going to have artwork on it. I encourage you all to go take a look at the lovely artwork. There is none. And again, we will hopefully have a playground in 2024. April of 2024 is currently what we're being told. Additionally, more than 20 trees have been removed and not replaced from Verbena Park over the past 8 years. 20 trees, counted and documented by residents. So we'd like some trees planted. We'd like to get the trees back that we once had. And this goes to the Kaiser conversation as well. And city departments needing to work together. We're hearing from Kaiser, we need more trees. Absolutely, we'd love more trees. That'd be great. But let's start with putting them back to where they were, that have been taken away from us. All right, so I know that sounded like a lot. I've added a few additional boxes here to what I presented on, and those are things like a grocery store. We live in a food desert. It'd be really amazing to have a grocery store, but there's not enough income in this neighborhood to convince a grocery store to move in. So therefore we are still grocery store-less, right? There are things like, I've asked Dottie to check out the bollards that were installed over on Uinta and 13th and 14th, a few places, because some of them are too skinny, so you can only have one car fit through, which is really unsafe, feels weird. I just wanted to check it out and make sure that they installed it right, because I really don't know that they did. So there's a few things added here. So keep in mind that much of what we've presented today has been promised to us for years. So it may feel like a lot, but we were supposed to get this over the past 5+ years. We're a neighborhood that's been forgotten about. We've been waiting patiently. We're tired of having to work so hard to be heard. We know other neighborhoods have overlapping needs, but how many other neighborhoods have all of these needs? On top of all of that, I would like to challenge you all to find reasons that these that I've highlighted, and in the room you can't really see them, but we will send this out, can't be done within months or even weeks. So a lot of what's on here are, we'd love city employees to come to East Colfax before they start a project, right? Just like, look at the neighborhood. We're happy to drive you around. And to that point, I would like to acknowledge the chief urban executive did drive around East Colfax with us, and we have had a few city employees who have hopped in a car and surveyed the neighborhood with us. We'd love to see more. We encourage it, we welcome it. We're all very proud of our neighborhood, right? That's why we're here, that's why we live here. We'd love to see things like a speed tracking vehicle in East Colfax. It's always on Yosemite and Central Park. It's always down 13th, just outside the neighborhood. Why do we not ever have one in East Colfax?
14th, and you get over this point, it just stops.
It stops. Yep. We'd love to see that. I would expect that could happen pretty quick. I don't.
Make a lot of money.
Yeah. Also that. We'd love to see transparency. When we ask for a parks budget, like for Verbena Park, we'd like to get the budget. We asked 4 or 5 times and we never got it. We still haven't seen it today. We still don't know how much money we got compared to these other parks. That's important to us.
Yes.
That's really important to us. In addition to the parks data, we'd love to see crash data. We'd love to see 311 data. We appreciate the data that was presented to us tonight. That's important for us to understand what's going on in our neighborhood, and we can never seem to get it. It's never released to us. It's never easy to find. Let me see if there's, and the last one I really want to touch on again is RNOs and other nonprofits need to be able to submit 311 tickets en masse. That is so incredibly important. And so in addition to seeing the 311 data, what we'd like to dig into is how can we do that? What we were told when we presented to Dottie in April was all of the pain points that we had, many of which were presented tonight, were going to be submitted en masse to 311 for us. We know it's possible. Now, did it ever happen? I have no idea. We've had no follow-up on any of those points, but in theory, that is a thing that can be done, and we'd like to see that. All right. I wouldn't have gone through all of this if I didn't think we couldn't achieve the items together, right? These are feasible. We can do this. We want to help the city do all of this. I'm surrounded by well-intentioned people, and I think sometimes we all just need a nudge and an understanding of how the community is feeling. So I'd like to leave everyone with tonight. Thank you all for joining. I think this is such an incredibly important conversation. I think this is such an incredible and vibrant community. And I would love to see us be able to thrive, right? I think we can be that really lovely, safe community that that we all want to see. It's just working together a little bit more and having all of these open items closed out in a timely manner.
Yes.
So thank you all.
That was so much work. That was incredible. Yeah, I feel like I have
Thank you so much.
I can't believe it. So good.
Thanks so much. So to anyone who's online, if you guys have other things to share, other things to send feedback, anything like that, please feel free to. You can always reach us at eastcolfaxneighborhood@gmail.com.